Hi there. I'm with Helen Penridge, who's a very happy PhD student, smashing away at her work with curlers and things. I'm going to ask her to introduce herself a little bit. But I wanted to say that it's been a real pleasure having Helen over many years now in the history major as a student, but also I always feel like as a colleague. And, you know, along the way, she's managed to kick some real goals. Out of the History 300 course, the essay she wrote became an article, a published article, which is what I opened this short clip with, just as a screenshot, just to give you a taste that, you know, some things sometimes emerge from places you wouldn't expect, like, you know, an undergraduate writing for an assessment suddenly, you know, gets this incredible clarity, which I really enjoyed in your rabbits piece, Helen. So I'm going to pass the ball to you and just say, where are you at in your own research work today, Helen?
Well, I did the History 300 course, and it's interesting. It sort of kicked me through from being, I felt very much an amateur in undergraduate history because I hadn't done any history, and you know, you're learning as you go along. And then the History 300 course sort of kicked me up to the next level. It's sort of everything came together a lot more. And the other thing was that I was able to write that article, which once again, the History 300 course just allowed me to, I really didn't think I was writing it for publication. It just all came together, and it was one of those happy moments where that underpinning of the course and a few ideas that I'd had for many years just all came together, and it worked, and then it got published. So then that gave me the confidence to think, well, I could do this. I'm more than just an amateur undergraduate historian. And so then I came to see you. We had COVID and all that sort of thing, so it's taken many years, and I've well, 3 or 4 years, and I've been reading steadily, using a lot of those ideas from the History 300 course, and I've just started my PhD. And the PhD is, so I'm 6 months in. I'm still quite confused and reading a lot of books and getting a lot of new ideas. And what I'm doing is I'm trying to look at some of the underlying ideas of history, the underlying concepts of history, but look at them from different directions than from my anthropocentric Western viewpoint. And so very much in the spirit of History 300, I'm just I'm questioning history, yes. So that the sort of topics I'm looking at are, what do we mean by cause? If we go out of the Western viewpoint into other perspectives, like animal perspectives and Indigenous perspectives and all sorts of other perspectives. So what does cause mean in those perspectives compared with where we're normally thinking of it? What does change mean? What does time mean? What does how do our values change when we move our perspective? So that's what at this stage I'm thinking of doing. It's a mountain. But
it's a happy mountain, I think.
It's a very happy mountain. And as I was saying to you yesterday, Marcus, I'm turning the Titanic around because I've got all these years of thinking the other way. So it's not something that's going to happen quickly, but it's very exciting. I'm really enjoying myself.
Yep. So for those of us like myself and Helen who are in retirement or close to retirement or whatever, there's life after retirement. You can go and do a PhD somewhere. Everybody, I'm sure, in Helen's family and everybody thinks she's mad, but you know, it's great.
Well, it's highly entertaining and better than television, believe me.
Oh, well, there you go. It's got to be. So thank you for that. It was a very good introduction. It sort of captures the way with this course, particularly, it can infiltrate all the areas that you're going to go into. And if you've been following these conversations consistently through the course, I'm now talking to you students listening, you will see that the students who've done the course have ended up in all sorts of different places. You know, they're on different trajectories, and none of them are the same. But there's something about, you know, the thinking that goes with History 300 that you can carry forward into your work. So that's really important. So overall, Helen, you know, when you got, you were this undergraduate, enters the History 300, most students found it a bit overwhelming and all that sort of stuff at first. How did you find the course when you entered it? Was it like you were ducked to water, or did you actually have to already start turning some of this Titanic around?
Well, throughout my degree, this arts degree that I've just done, I very much flew between the flags. I was sort of relying on the instructors to be sort of guiding my thinking to a certain extent. So I didn't find it overwhelming. I just bit off the first week's activities and I tried to do them. I did quarantine time to do my readings and all those things, and I always answered the questions before I got into the tutorial. I suppose that was it was all a struggle because I was battling with these ideas and I had to give myself enough time to sort of ponder some of them. So yes, but no, I didn't find it a struggle, but it certainly wasn't a doddle, you know, and I couldn't.
You're right.
And I couldn't cut any corners. I had to put in the time. Yeah, but it worked, and yes. And you don't understand it all at the beginning, and it gently coalesces around you as time goes on. It's a bit like a cake, isn't it? It's sort of, it has to cook.
It does. So you've already, in a sense, answered this next question, which is what did you get out of it? Because you listed causality and time and all those sorts of things. Can you be a little bit more specific maybe and say something that you got out of History 300 that was like almost like a takeaway?
I really got a much better feeling for how the profession works and what it is to be a good historian. And not that I say I'm a good historian, but what you're aiming for, and also that as we were talking about before, that element of reflecting all the time. What's influencing my thinking here? What are the assumptions I'm making here? Is there another way of looking at it? And that sort of mode of thinking. I think that was History 300 that sort of captured that for me and put it inside me. Yeah,
that's wonderful. And so the other side of it is, what did you struggle with? Was there anything in particular that just felt like hard grind to you, or was just difficult, or maybe pressed all your buttons?
Yeah, it was all difficult.
Okay.
It was all difficult, but that was the fun of it. That was, I used to sit out on the deck on Sunday afternoon and do my readings and try to answer the questions. And I was actually looking forward to the tutorials always to hear what everybody else said about those things. And so it was hard work, but not work that I wanted to avoid at all. I just really enjoyed it. It was a bit like doing a lovely swim, or it was, you had to put in the steady time and you got a lot of reward for it. And I did find the tutorials just wonderful. I was panting to get there because you just hear so many things that hadn't occurred to you before. But that only works if you've already had a bit of a think of it, about it before you actually get in there.
That's true.
You couldn't do that. I can't see how you could do that course and in any way enjoy it if you hadn't done the readings.
You
had to do that prior to getting there. Yes.
Yeah. And I think it's really important to acknowledge how the conversations in the tutorials are absolutely essential in helping all of us, me included, work and feel our way with ideas, because ideas aren't right and wrong. There's not sort of, yes, now you've got that. These ideas in the historical profession or the humanities in general are always evolving. They're evolving around us. They evolve almost like an ecology that evolves.
Yes. And the other thing about the tutorials was it was fascinating that, someone mightn't say anything for 6 weeks and suddenly they came to life, and maybe that particular week was particularly of interest to them or something, and they'd have perspectives that were just totally different from mine. It was very, anybody who wanted to participate could, and had really good stuff to contribute. You didn't have to be the best history student in the class or anything to have a very novel perspective that contributed. It was just wonderful. And everybody, by the end, everybody was really, we didn't have fisticuffs, but we had some very stimulating conversations, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. And that's the absolute joy for me of teaching the course, is that those who engage, and of course there will be some who don't, but those who engage really do evolve, but they find their voice. And also it's kind of like it becomes a little community in that room for that period of time.
Yes. And another wonderful part of it was when we had the presentations, because as you say, they were just the oddest assortment of things that people could talk about. And they had all drawn from all those readings, but they'd all drawn different aspects of all those readings and all the discussions. So there was a lot of we covered a lot of territory in the time, I felt. A huge amount of territory in the time, And the other thing is that we went off into literature, we went off into sociology, we went off into philosophy. It wasn't just history, it was life, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And I think that's really important to recognise. It came up in one of our other interviews that essentially a good historical conversation is going to be transdisciplinary. You can't just say, we've got to stay within these parameters. That actually anything is fair game in the historical context when we're trying to work things out. You've already answered this question really, but about advice for new students. So you say do your reading and stuff like that. Is there anything else that you would want to add to that?
I think you have to go with your passion. You have to go with something that you're interested in. And also, the way that worked well for me was that I think it was week 2, was Rusin in week 2, the framework that I was using.
Yes, the framework. Yep, absolutely, yeah.
Which just happened to click with the way that my mind works. And so I thought, I'm going to write my essay on that. So I hadn't done most of the course. And then all the way through the rest of the course, I was picking up bits that would fit in. But maybe people that were wanting to write about feminism or something that was down the end of the course wouldn't have had that luxury I don't
Mm.
know. I suppose that's the other bit of advice, that I started early and I thought about my topic for a long time within the soup of History 300, and that makes a big difference, I think. Yeah. Do you,
Great
but then
advice.
that's not going to work for everybody, is it? But I suppose people can read ahead, can't they? Find the topic
Yes,
in
yeah.
there that they're interested in.
I actually tell students, if you've decided you want to do something on women in history, go and do all the week 7 or whatever it is readings now, so that you're actually grounding yourself in that thinking. And otherwise, it's kind of like people put it off. But
So
no,
then I was pulling things in from each week
yeah,
that suited my
yeah,
purposes.
yeah,
And also that made the reading of that week quite interesting for me, because I'm thinking, well, how does this relate to this real
yeah,
life
yeah.
bit of history that I'm trying to write?
Yeah. So that's relevance, finding relevance for the readings. And in history, we can have all these wonderful philosophical or abstract ideas, but they don't really come together or mean anything beyond ideas until we actually start practicing the history in some way.
Yes. So I suppose that'd be another bit of advice. I deliberately tried to think of a topic that I was interested in, but also that the audience of my presentation would be interested in. I actually did that quite deliberately. So when I was writing and preparing, I very much had an audience in mind, as you say, a practical situation in mind. Yes,
absolutely. I think that's great. Anything else you want to add, Helen? I mean, it's been really good what you've been telling us. Yeah.
No, just that I just found it a thoroughly enjoyable course, and it truly did cap off my history degree. It added value to everything that I'd done before that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, and I will. I look forward to chatting to you again about where you're going in your own studies and research. I'm going to end the recording now, but don't go away, because we can have a quick chat before we do.